Good afternoon, friends. So, I welcome you all in this session on capital budgeting. So, friends, we had discussed part 1 of capital budgeting yesterday, and the remaining part of capital budgeting we will be discussing today. So, friends, let's have a quick relook what we had discussed yesterday, and then we will discuss the remaining part of our capital budgeting which we could not discuss yesterday. So, friends, as you might be well aware about the functions of financial management, as we had discussed yesterday, that first of all we need to identify and we need to determine the requirement of funds, and once the funds requirement is determined by the top management, then we have to identify the sources through which we need to raise the funds. And then when this second part is also over, then we need to decide the composition of the various sources of funds. Say for example, if we have to mobilize the funds by issuing the equity share capital and from debentures capital and from loan capital, then we need to determine that how much we need to raise the funds by issuing the equity share capital, and how much we should raise from debentures capital, and how much we should raise from taking the loan from the banks and from the financial institution. So, this composition is also very important while mobilizing the funds from the market, because as we had discussed yesterday that there are two types of cost of capital, that is fixed cost of capital and variable cost of capital, that is what we call internal cost of capital. So, friends, in case where there is regularity and certainty of income, in such case we can mobilize the funds by issuing the debentures capital or by taking a loan from the banks or from the financial institutions, because when we issue the debentures capital or when we take the loan from the financial institutions, these employs fixed cost of capital. Say for example, if the company has mobilized rupees 10 lakh 10% debenture from the market, then 10% of 10 lakh, that is rupees 1 lakh, the company is bound to make the payment of rupees 1 lakh as interest on debenture irrespective of the amount of profit or loss. And likewise, if we have taken the loan, say for example, if we have taken loan of 50 lakhs at the rate of 10%, then again rupees 5 lakh as interest on taking the loan, this amount of interest of rupees 5 lakh, we have to make the payment irrespective of the amount of profit or loss. Therefore, these sources and this cost of capital is known as fixed cost of capital, that every year on account of mobilizing the funds by taking the loan from the financial institution, the company is under the obligation to make the payment of rupees 5 lakh as interest on loan is mandatory. Company cannot escape from this obligation of making the interest to the financial institution. And as far as the variable cost of capital, as we had discussed, that if we mobilize the funds by issuing the equity share capital, then the cost of capital would be in terms of dividend. So, the company can make the payment of the dividend, and if the company do not want to make the payment of the dividend, then company can take such decision. And even if the company wants to make the payment of dividend to the shareholder, then what should be the rate of dividend is again decided by the company in its annual general meeting. So, sometime the rate of dividend may be less, sometime the rate of dividend may be on the higher side. So, therefore, this is what we call variable cost of capital, because here the cost of capital in terms of dividends keep varying over a period of time. So therefore this sources of mobilizing the funds is known as variable cost of capital. Well friends, now the next is kinds of capital budgeting. So well friends, when we speak about the kinds of capital budgeting, so there are three kinds of capital budgeting. The first one is accept and reject decision. Well friends, all independent proposals and any proposal when it do not compete with the other proposal simultaneously is known as independent proposal. So when we have to take a decisions about the acceptance and rejections in case of those projects which are completely independent, it means these projects do not compete with each other. Say for example, if you want to buy a house in Dwarka and you have two options, that either you want to buy a house at Dwarka in sector 6 or in sector 7. You have two proposals, that either you can have a house in sector 6 of Dwarka or in sector 7 of Dwarka. So in that particular case, in case if you accept that okay, I must go for buying a house in sector 6 of Dwarka, then automatically the second option would automatically be rejected. So these are what we call independent proposals, or when the company is looking for the site of a plant, and if you have two choice, that either you can establish the plant either at Noida or at Vasant Vihar. So say for example, if you have decided to establish the plant at Noida, then establishment of plant at Vasant Vihar would automatically be rejected. So this is possible only in case when the projects are independent and when they do not compete with each other. Then second one is mutually competitive decisions. So well friends, in case of mutually competitive decisions, you can, in case of mutually competitive decisions, so when the acceptance of proposal will automatically reject the proposals of the other. Say well friends, this is what we had discussed just now. This was possible only in case of mutually exclusive decision, that the acceptance of one proposal will automatically reject the acceptance of other proposal. This is happening only in case of mutually exclusive proposal. So just recorrect it. And then the first one is acceptance and rejection decision. So these acceptance and rejection decision, when all the projects are independent, in that case we can accept all the proposal simultaneously. And what should be the criteria of acceptance and rejections? Simply, in case if the actual rate of return is more than the predetermined rate of return which is decided by the management, we will accept all those proposals. And in case if the actual return of these proposals is less than the predetermined rate, we will outrightly reject the proposal. So this is for the acceptance and rejection decision. And the second, mutually exclusive, as we had discussed, that in case if we want to establish a plant either at Noida or at Vasant Kunj, so in case we decide to take a decision to establish the plant at Noida, then the proposal of establishing the plant at Vasant Vihar would automatically be rejected. So these are mutually exclusive sort of decision. So acceptance of one proposal will automatically reject the other proposal. Then third one is priority orders decision. Well friends, if a firm has unlimited funds, in that case all independent proposal can be accepted or rejected simultaneously. So in case where any projects giving rate of return higher than the required rate of returns will be accepted, and vice versa. And when we have to take a decision, so any proposal which is giving the highest rate of return will be given rank 1, and any proposal giving a rate of return at number 2 will be rank 2, so on and so forth. Then techniques of capital budgeting. Well friends, we had discussed two techniques of capital budgeting yesterday, that is payback period, and the second one is NPV, that is net present value method of taking a decision as far as the proposal of any project is concerned. Now the next technique is average rate of return, or this is what we call accounting rate of return. So as per this techniques of capital budgeting, we will take the decision whether to undertake a project or not. So here average rate of return is calculated. The formula is average annual profit after depreciation and tax multiply by 100 divided by average investment. So here friends, the concept of average investment and the concept of average annual profit after depreciation and tax. So this is very important. So let's discuss how do we calculate the average annual profit. So it's very simple. Total profit after depreciation and tax divided by the number of years. Say for example, if we have 5 years and there is a proposal which is giving us the profit or which is giving us the return for a period of 5 years. So we will calculate the profit of such a project for a period of 5 years, taking into consideration the amount of depreciation and tax. So here in this case, it must be after charging the amount of depreciation and after charging the amount of tax. So in case if any project which is giving us the return before charging the depreciation and tax, in such a case the amount of depreciation and tax must be subtracted, and only after charging the amount of depreciation and tax, the net profit of that particular project over the expected useful life of the project will be taken into consideration. And then average investment. So average investment can easily be calculated. It is original investment minus salvage value divided by 2 plus salvage value. So original investment minus salvage value divided by 2 plus salvage value. Say for example, the original investment of a project is rupees 1 lakh and the salvage value is rupees 10,000. So salvage value is the value which is expected to be realized after the expected useful life of the asset. When we discard any asset, so at the time of discarding the asset, whatever amount is realized is known as salvage value. So here the cost of the project is rupees 1 lakh, that is the original investment is 1 lakh minus salvage value, that is rupees 10,000 divided by 2. So 1 lakh minus 10,000, it is 90,000 divided by 2, that is 45,000 plus salvage value. So salvage value is 10,000, so 45,000 plus 10,000, that is 55,000. So this is how do we calculate the average investment. So now I think the concept of average annual profit and concept of average investments both would be very much clear in the mind of the learners, and they should not get any sort of confusion while calculating the amount of average annual profit after depreciation and tax, and then average investment, which is original investment minus salvage value divided by 2 plus salvage value. So well friends, acceptance and rejection decision. So very simple, if average rate of return is more than the predetermined rate of return. So any project giving average rate of return or accounting rate of return more than the predetermined rate of return would be accepted, and vice versa. And in case if the ARR, that is average rate of return, is equal to the predetermined rate of return, the company can accept or the company can reject the proposal depending upon the other internal or external factors. So these factors are again very important. So that depends upon the company, that what kinds of factors are given the priority while taking the decision. So depending upon the priority of those factors, such decisions are taken. Then advantages of this method, ARR method, that is accounting rate of return, and this method is also known as average rate of return. The first one is simple. This method is very simple to understand and can easily be implemented in any kind of business enterprise. Then the second one is entire life of the project is considered. So well friends, as far as the profit maximization objective is concerned, so we cannot achieve this objective until or unless the entire life of the project is concerned, because you might have seen in case of payback period. So in payback period we consider the life of the project only up to a stage where the business enterprise is in a position to recover the original cost of the project. So once the original cost of the project is concerned and when it is recovered, then the business has nothing to do with the remaining life of the project. But here it is not possible in case of accounting rate of return, that is average rate of return. So well friends, in case of average rate of return, the entire life of the project is considered. So this can easily be achieved when we do have the long-term objectives into consideration. Then the disadvantages. So very simple. The first one is lack time value of money. Well friends, as we had discussed that this method suffers from the time value of money. It means that this method does not consider the time value of money. As you might be well aware that because of inflation, because of the reducing purchasing power of money, because of hike in prices, the value of money, say for example, the value of rupees 1 lakh today is not equal to the value of rupees 1 lakh after 1 year. So with the passage of the time, because of inflation, the value of the money over a period of time get depreciated. Therefore the time value of money is gaining a lot of importance, and we cannot overlook the importance of time value of money. And when we need to take a decision about the acceptance or the rejections of a particular proposal, we must definitely consider the time value of money or the expected annual cash inflows which are expected to give a return to the projects over a particular expected useful life. Then in such a case, these annual cash inflows which are expected to generate over a period of its expected useful life must be multiplied by the time value of the present value of the annual cash inflows with the present value on a particular discount rate. So this particular discount rate is determined by the management. So when we multiply the annual cash inflows with the present value of ₹1 at a particular discount rate, we arrived at the present value of the cash inflows. So this method of project appraisal does not consider the time value of money. Then the third one is difficult to fix a predetermined rate. Well friends, because it is really very difficult to determine a predetermined rate. So this predetermined rate is basically determined by the top management, and this rate is determined with the past experience and with the help of the experts. But since there is no sound logic behind determining the rate of return, therefore this method is not based on scientific logic. It is simply based on some assumptions, and if those assumptions does not hold true, in that case any decision taken based on such assumption will lead us nowhere, and ultimately we need to face lot of difficulties while taking a decision. Then the next one is size of investment not taken into consideration. So again this method also suffers from the limitation that this method does not establish a relationship between the rate of return and the amount invested in that particular project. So until or unless the return is compared with the cost of the project and the rate of return is not linked with the cost of the project, probably we cannot take a sound decision and we cannot take a healthy decision. Then considers accounting incomes and ignore cash profit. Well friends, you might be well aware that cash profits are always better than the accounting income, and you all might be well aware, being students and the background of finance and accounting, what actually accounting income is all about, because you might have studied that the accounting income is basically determined based on the accrual basis, and here in a case where the cash profit is not taken into consideration, probably we cannot arrive at a healthy decision as far as the acceptance and rejection of a particular project proposal is concerned, because the logic behind this is that in case if the average cash profits are taken into consideration, so these cash profits may be reinvested somewhere else where we could have a better rate of return, but this is not possible in case of accounting income. So this cash profit is always considered better than the accounting income. Well friends, then the next one is profitability index, so PI. So well friends, this method is an improved method over the net present value method. So you might have seen that in case of net present value method, we had considered the time value of money. So that way that method was somewhat logical, but the biggest disadvantage of that method was that in case of NPV method, we do not consider the size of investment which is required in order to undertake a project. As I had given an example that, say for example, if a project requires rupees 10 lakh and the present value of all the cash inflows of that particular project is 15 lakh. So that way the net present value of that particular project would be 15 lakh minus 10 lakh, that is rupees 5 lakh. And on the other hand, there is one more project and the original cost of the investment of this project is rupees 1 lakh, and the present value of all the cash inflows of this particular project is, say for example, rupees 3 lakh. So that way the net present value of this project would be rupees 2 lakh, that is rupees 3 lakh minus rupees 1 lakh, that is rupees 2 lakh. So here in this case, if we compare, so we come to know that as per the NPV method, the first proposal is better, because the NPV of project first is more than the NPV of project 2, because in case of project A, the NPV is rupees 5 lakh and the NPV of project B is rupees 2 lakh. But this method is not logical, this is not practical, because the NPV method does not consider the cost of the project. So here the NPV of rupees 5 lakh is compared with the cost of the project. So here the rate of return is 50%, because the original cost of project A was rupees 10 lakh and the NPV is rupees 5 lakh. So that way the rate of return is 50%. But as far as the second project, that is project B, is concerned, the cost of the project was rupees 1 lakh, but the NPV, that is net present value, is 2 lakh, that is 3 lakh minus 1 lakh. Present value of all the cash inflows was rupees 3 lakh and the original cost was 1 lakh. So when we subtracted the original cost of the project from the present value of all the cash inflows, we arrived at the net present value. So here the net present value is rupees 2 lakh. And here if we establish a relationship of the NPV with the original cost of the project, so the NPV is rupees 2 lakh and the original cost of the project is 1 lakh. So that way the return comes to 200%. So if we see it practically, if we see it with a logic, scientific logic, we comes to know that project A is not beneficial, rather project B is far better as compared to the project A. So in such a situation, the PI method, that is profitability index method, is a better method, where the original cost of the investment of the projects are different. As now we have discussed an example, because the PI method takes into consideration the returns with the original cost of the project. So the formula for calculating the PI method is present value of all the cash inflows divided by the present value of cash outflows, or we can call it present value of the cost of the project. So in case the acceptance and rejection decision would depend that in case if the profitability index, if the PI is greater than 1, the proposal would be accepted, and if it is less than 1, the proposal would be outrightly rejected. And if the PI is equal to 1, it means project may be accepted and project may not be accepted. So that will depend upon all the other internal and external factors, depending upon the priority, depending upon the significance of those factors for the management, that which factors gain how much significance for the management. So those factors should also be considered equally important while taking such a important decision. Then the advantage of this method is it considers the time value of money. Yes, of course, the PI method also considers the time value of money, as the net present value method is also also considers the time value of money. So likewise this PI method also considers the time value of money. Number 2, considers all cash inflows during its lifetime. So as the NPV method also considers the returns of the project over its expected useful life, likewise this method, that is profitability index method, also consider the entire life of the project. So whatever returns are generated by the projects are taken into considerations while taking such an important decision. Then the next one is disadvantage. So the disadvantage of this method is difficult to understand. So this method, that is profitability index method, is slightly difficult. So when we speaks about the profitability index, so profitability index is basically a method where we takes a decision whether to undertake a project or not to undertake a project. That depends upon the rate of return which is compared with the original cost of the project. So in such a case, if the PI is greater than 1, we accept the proposal and vice versa. Then the next one is, next one is IRR method. So this IRR method is again very important and slightly difficult to understand, but I will try my best to explain it as simple as it can be. So just try to be very attentive in order to understand this method properly. Though it's very simple, and I am sure that all my learners would be understanding these methods properly without any difficulty and without any hesitation. So well friends, IRR, internal rate of return. So IRR is a rate where the NPV is 0. So or we can say that IRR is a rate where the present value of all the cash inflows is equal to the present value of cash outflow. So well friends, when we talk about IRR, so this IRR is also known as minimum required rate of return, and this IRR is not an hypothetical rate. The IRR is calculated keeping in view the average cash inflows which is expected to generate over its expected useful life of the project. So that way this method is the most scientific and logical method, because in net present value method the rate of return, that is discount rate, is already determined by the top management, and what grounds, what criteria the management has applied in order to determine that particular rate is not a cup of everybody, those who are taking particularly this sort of decision. So therefore IRR is the actual rate which denotes the profitability and which considers the actual amount of cash inflows over the expected useful life of the project. So if the actual cash inflows are taken into consideration, the time value of money is also taken into consideration, then decision based on such logics will definitely help the management to take a very sound decision about to accept a proposal or not to accept a proposal. So the acceptance and rejection criteria is very simple. If IRR, that is internal rate of return, if IRR is more than the required rate of return, the project must be accepted and vice versa. As I have already told you that in case where there are more than one project, in that case the acceptance and rejection decision would depend upon the internal rate of return. So in such a case, any project giving the highest RR would be accepted and will be given rank 1. Any project giving IRR at number 2 will be given rank 2, so on and so forth. So this is how we take acceptance or rejection decision based on the IRR. Now the question arises, how IRR is determined? What is the procedure or what steps are involved in order to determine the IRR? So before discussing those steps, we would like to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of this IRR method. So the first one is time value of money. So well friend, this is, we have already discussed many times that this method considers the present value of all the cash inflows expected to be generated over its expected useful life of the project. Then second one is considers all cash inflows occurring over its expected useful life. Well friends, as I have discussed this concept many times, that until or unless the full life of the project is considered, we cannot achieve the wealth maximization or profit maximization objective. As we had noticed in case of payback period, so in that particular techniques of capital budgeting, we had seen that any project who is giving the in payback period, any project where the payback period is the minimum one is outrightly accepted and vice versa. But in case of IRR, this method of capital budgeting considers the entire life of the cost of the project, whereas in case of NPV we simply consider up to that particular stage where the original cost of the project is recovered, and once the original cost of the project is recovered, then we hardly matters about the forthcoming annual cash inflows. It means we do not bother much about the future cash inflows which a project is expected to generate. But in the IRR method, we consider all the cash inflows which are expected to take place over the expected useful life of the project. Then, as I told you yesterday, that it is very easy to understand, as if I say that the IRR is 18% and the required rate of return is 10%. So I can easily take a decision, yes, we should go for the project. Simply if I say that the NPV of a project is rupees 1 lakh. So simply by saying that the NPV of a project is rupees 1 lakh does not carry any meaning until or unless the size of investment is also taken into consideration. If a project where, say for example, rupees 1 crore is expected to be invested, so getting an income of rupees 1 lakh when it is compared with the original cost, that is rupees 1 crore, probably is very less rate of return. So in case when we speak about the net present value, then definitely we must establish a relationship, or we must calculate, we must see that the NPV is also compared with the original cost of the project. But this does not carry any meaning, and the NPV method does not consider the original cost of the project, as we had discussed many times. Disadvantage. So calculation of IRR is slightly difficult. So the steps which are involved in order to calculate the IRR is slightly complex. Then the second one is, it is assumed that all the cash inflows are reinvested at IRR rate. So this logic is far from the reality, and it is not possible that whatever amount of cash inflows takes place during its expected useful life, such cash inflows are reinvested at IRR in the business. So these cash inflows may be utilized by the firm for any other purpose also, maybe for buying the assets or maybe for making the payment of the debentures, so on and so forth. So we cannot say that whatever amount of cash inflows are there, so such amount of cash inflows are reinvested in the business itself at the IRR rate, which is very far away from the realities. Now we will discuss that what steps are involved in order to calculate the IRR with the help of the example. So it's very simple to understand. The example is cost of the project is rupees 6 lakh and the expected useful life of the project is 5 years and the expected cash inflows are rupees 1.4 lakh in the first year, rupees 1.6 lakh in the second year, rupees 1.8 lakh in the third year, rupees 2 lakh in the fourth year and rupees 2.5 lakh in the fifth year. Now we have to determine the IRR. So very simple. First step is to calculate the fake payback period, and fake payback period we can easily calculate by adding the annual cash inflows over its expected useful life. So if we add up the cash inflows of its expected useful life, that is 5 years, so total of cash inflows over a period of 5 years is rupees 9,30,000. So if we divide it by 5, it comes rupees 1,86,000. So this is average cash inflows. So here now we have to calculate the fake payback period. So fake payback period is cost of the project, as we had already discussed, divided by average cash inflows. So cost of the project is rupees 6 lakh divided by average cash inflows. So average cash inflows we have already calculated 1.86 lakh. So that way the fake payback period is 3.253 year. This is fake payback period. Now this was the first step. Now the second step is slightly more important, and we need to pay our more attentions while understanding the second steps of this method. Now what we have to do is that we have to locate the fake payback period in the annuity table corresponding to its expected useful life. So the expected useful life is the 5 year. So if we locate 3.253 in the rows corresponding to the expected useful life, that is 5 year, that is 5 years. So if we locate this value in the corresponding row of expected useful life, that is 5 year, it comes to 3.274 against 16%. So when we locate the fake payback period 3.253 in the present value of annuity table at different discount rate, say for example from 1% to 25%. So this 3.253 is nearest to 3.274 corresponding to the 16% discount rate against the expected useful life of the project, which is 5 years. So this 3.274 is the nearest value against the payback period, that is 3.253. Now this is the first discount rate which we have identified. So now we can easily calculate the NPV, that is net present value, based on this first discount rate, that is 16%. So well friends, at 16% discount rate, the present value of ₹1 at 16% discount rate after first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year is given in the question, and I have already discussed with you how the present value of rupee 1 at different discount rate is calculated. So it's very simple, 1 divided by 1 plus r is the discount rate raised to the power 1 for the first year. For the second year, 1 divided by 1 plus r raised to the power 2 for the second year, so on and so forth. So now we can easily calculate. So our cash inflows are given. For the first year it is 1.4 lakh, for the second year 1.6 lakh, for third year 1.8 lakh, for the fourth year 2 lakh, and for the fifth year 2.5 lakh. So if we multiply the cash inflows with the present value of rupee 1 at 16% discount rate, that is 0.862 for the first year, 0.743 for the second year, 0.641 for the third year, 0.552 for the fourth year, 0.476 for the fifth year. So we arrive 1,20,680 for the first year, 1,18,880 for the second year, 1,15,380 for the third year, 1,10,400 for the fourth year, 1,19,000 for the fifth year. So now we add up the present value of all the cash inflows, which comes to rupees 5,84,340. So now we can calculate the net present value. So net present value is equal to the present value of all the cash inflows, which is 5,84,340 minus present value of the cash outflow, or we can call it present value of the cost of the project, that is rupees 6 lakh. So it comes to rupees minus 15,660. So well friends, this is the minus NPV. So now this minus NPV has to be converted with the positive NPV. So therefore we need to determine a second rate where the NPV is positive. So well friends, this, if the NPV is negative at 16% discount rate, it means we must take a lower rate in order to convert the negative NPV into the positive, because if we will discount at a lower rate, very simple, the NPV would be converted into positive, and it will hardly take 1 to 2 minutes just to understand, and then this final method of IRR will be over. So very simple. Now we try at 14%. So at 14% discounted, because if it first we try at 15%, so again at 15% the NPV comes into negative. So again we will come down. Now we will try at 14%. So if we will try at 14%, then the net present value of the first year would be 1,22,720, and then so on and so forth. So the total present value of all the cash inflows for 5 years, it comes to 6,15,470. So now we can easily calculate the net present value. Net present value is equal to the present value of all the cash inflows minus present value of the cash outflow. So the present value of cash inflow is 6,15,470 minus cost of the project, that is present value of the cost of the project is 6 lakh. Therefore the NPV is 15,470. So now we have a negative NPV, we have a positive NPV, and we have two different discount rate, that is 16% and 14%. Now simply if you apply the formula, you will come to know about the exact IRR. So that IRR is a rate where NPV would be 0. So now that formula for calculating the exact IRR is LDR, that is lower discount rate, plus NPV at LDR divided by NPV at LDR minus NPV at HDR, multiply by difference of discount rates. So difference of discount rate is 2, because the first discount rate was 16% and the second discount rate was 14%. So therefore the difference is 2%. So now LDR, that is 14% plus NPV at LDR. So NPV at lower discount rate is 15,470 divided by NPV at LDR. NPV at LDR is again 15,470 minus NPV at HDR. So NPV at HDR, it means higher discount rate, that is 16%, that is minus 15,660. सो माइनस आपको पहले भी दिया हुआ है और माइनस ही आपका ये एनपीवी हायर डिस्काउंट रेट पे है, तो जब ये माइनस का सिंबल अंदर जाएगा तो इट विल बिकम्स पॉजिटिव एंड मल्टीप्लाई बाय डिफरेंस इन डिस्काउंट रेट, दैट इज 2. सो 14% प्लस एनपीवी एट लोअर डिस्काउंट रेट 15,470 divided by 31,130. It means 15,470 plus 15,660, that comes to 31,330. So the exact IRR is 14.67%. So this is how do we calculate the exact IRR while taking a decision based on these techniques of capital budgeting, whether to undertake a project or not. So my advice to the learners is that they should pay their attentions while they try to understand a particular concept. So if they are paying their best attention, if they are trying to understand the concept properly, then to the best of my knowledge there should not be any problem for the students. And these 5 techniques of capital budgeting based on which a decision is taken as far as the investment decision is concerned is very, very easy. And I am pretty sure that with such a discussion and with the help of such interaction, my learners would have been benefited a lot. And in case if there is any doubt in their mind, our toll-free number and other numbers are given to you, so you can write to us. We will definitely respond to your questions and we will try our best to resolve the queries, resolve the doubts which comes to your mind. Thank you very much.